Because the whole thing about these things are spiritual visions to begin with, that are beyond really the concreteness of what we like to box things into. So there is this, the Ramchal himself is kind of painting this picture that allows a lot of the contradictions, because a lot of people get bent out of shape over the seemingly discrepancies between different writings of the Ari, for example. How they contradict. In this chapter he says this thing, and they start making elaborate answers. And this thing helps you see it. But then I just want to get to this concept. The Ramchal says like this. He goes through the system from top to bottom in one sefer, and that's like already a feast, to go through this concept of from the beginning of why Hashem wanted to create the world, and what the purpose is, and what the end goal is in terms of Yemaisa Mashiach and Olam Haba, and then goes on to explain what exactly the spheros are, and how that affects prophecy, and what prophecy is, and how each one of us can experience what does this mean that God is one. Yet I am I. I have an I. The story goes that, sometimes we have to forget the I in the self. And he goes on, and I'll just give you a couple simple examples of what you can do to be able to break into a difficult sefer like the Klach B'Sefat. He says, for example, there was the Ar Pashut, V'Mala Kol HaMetzias. I don't know if that's exactly words that he uses, but there was a light that had this simple quality to it, because it's the light of Ein Sof. The Ar Ein Sof. It is the Ar Ein Sof. And since it is the Ar Ein Sof, it's not yet differentiated. You can't talk about spheros there in a way that we can talk about spheros here. And because that light was infinite, was really infinite, there was no room for any finiteness. There's no room for any existence there, as we know it, that could exist outside of that light. So therefore, there was a concept of this symptom, this withdrawal of that light. Now, one of the great things about Chassidus, particularly in Nachman of Breslov, Nachman says when you learn the story of the Tzimtzum, whether it's in the Klach or in the Eitz Chaim, learn it about yourself. Because the Tzimtzum could be a metaphor not just for Ar Ein Sof, but it's a metaphor for yourself, for your neshama. First, you had a neshama that permeated, that was all who you were, but you couldn't be an ego. And then in order to have an ego, to have a Yetzer Hara and all the things that come with it, all the baggage that you'll eventually have, then you needed to have a tzimtzum. To be born, to be individuated, to be differentiated. So then after the tzimtzum, he introduces this concept of the Rishima and the Kav, or Chut. Rishima is that really, he says, what is the tzimtzum doing? He says, it's not just, the simple person reads the tzimtzum and says, before there was divine light, now there's emptiness, there's nothingness. No, he says, when there was just divine light, in that divine light, it's not just infinite. It's infinite, but it also has potential specific qualities in it, but they can't even be called specific qualities. Why? Because they're so, they can't do anything specific, because they're bound up with the infinite light. The infinite and the finite were one in the original light before the Tzimtzum. So since the infinite and the finite were one, there could be no finiteness coming out of the Ar Ein Sof, because it would be blinded, so to speak, by the infiniteness of the infinite quality. So what the Ar Ein Sof's Tzimtzum took place, it was not just to empty out Ar Ein Sof, so to speak, metaphorically. It was to reveal the koach of specific koach in the Ein Sof, koach hasof, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, the koach of gvul, the ability of limit, to be revealed in that, what we call the chala, the machmapanui, that emptiness. It's not real emptiness. And into that came a ha'ara, emanation of light. It's metaphorically called a kav, a ray of light. Again, these are metaphors. Kav, yeah.
Can I lend clarity to that metaphor?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Go ahead, that's why you're here.
Ein Sof is a misnomer. It simply indicates, it's before